are you going to share all of our secrets here today?
There's no secret. Okay, it's all common sense. But we've got a 12-point sort of process to do it, and I think it's important, maybe even before I talk about planning, is to talk about the different roles, just very briefly, that there is in a retreat. And one is the logistics planning. Let's book the flights and book the hotels and let's make sure schedules are clean. Okay, so that's typically like a meeting planner or an event planner kind of person. That's the title, but it's really more logistics planning, making sure there's swag, that everyone gets the baseball cap and the pen with the company's logo, or all that kind of like administrative kind of stuff. If you don't do that well, it's doesn't happen, these retreats, magically. So that's that. The second is the content and the flow planning, the structure of the retreat itself, which I'll talk about in a minute. There's the facilitator, that's another role. There's the trainer, that's another role. The best retreats often have the facilitator and trainer. If you can get them to be the same sort of team, that's better. The executive, well, they've got a particular role in the attendees, right? So if we think about all of those different roles, here's that 12-point plan. Okay. We have to determine what's the objective of the organizer. And at that particular point, they probably have some initial ideas. They'll have some initial ideas of kind of what they like. We like to do strategic planning. We would like to build a common leadership, upskill our team's leadership capabilities. We would like whatever it is. Okay. And the second sort of step of that, if you will, is interviews that we would do with all the participants. For the CEO, it's if they're not the organizer, it's what's their objective? What are they hoping to get out of it? What are the issues that they see as top of mind in their organization? For everybody else, what do they want to get from the offsite? What are the issues that they're taking up their mind? What are the opportunities that they think might be interesting to explore? Anyway, so all those interviews, but we can't do those interviews without doing a huge amount of research beforehand. Because how can we possibly walk into an interview without understanding the industry and the particular organization as well? After that, the interviews and the research and meeting the person who's our key contact, the organizer, putting together a draft agenda. Once we've got the draft agenda agreed we'll craft the presentations and the run of show, the activities, etc. Excuse me, some of the fun activities, etc. That logistics planning person will do all the organizing to actually make that happen. Whereas we would focus on the facilitation and the training and the flow of the day as well. Once we've got the draft version of the presentations activities, at that point, we'll actually come back and we'll review and approve. Here's kind of what we're looking of accomplishing. Here's kind of almost, a walkthrough of the slide decks if we're using slide decks or the other activities, etc. Once we've got that done, then it's a question of finalizing that and also starting to work on all the pre-prep. Okay, what is the pre-prep that everyone's going to do beforehand, right? It takes time to do. What's the monitoring that's going to happen to make sure that they actually do it? Is it a reading? Is it a survey? Is it some pre-meetings? Is it teamwork? Okay. If depending on the client, we'll set up a portal. So everyone might have access to that before, and sometimes we'll set up the portal afterwards. They have access to it afterwards. So once that's done, there's a communication plan. Everybody has to be on the same page. We want the CEO to be able to send something out. We want the person who's organizing it to send certain things out. We want to send things out. Why? Because we want to work on setting the expectations and making sure everyone understands kind of what their role is and what's going to happen and everything. There's all the logistics, which the logistics person will take care of. Then there's a rehearsal. You do not walk in as a facilitator or as a presenter without actually doing a lot of rehearsal. And we want to make sure that we're at the top of our game. So we'll do all that. We video, we critique. Certainly at the Braintrust, Rania and I will critique each other, etc. Then we arrive early. We don't just show up with everybody else. Why? Because we want to make sure the room is set up the way we want. We want to make sure that the technology is working the way it needs to be. Is the room set up the way we actually want it? No matter what instructions that we give to the venue, they'll get it right 80% of the time, 80% of the way there. And as a result, we're going to move tables around. There's not a line of sight. Gee, people are going to have their back to it. Wouldn't it be more effective here to do it in a U shape or half rounds or whatever it happens to be? Gee, there's not enough flip charts in the room. Gee, there's flip charts, but there's no markers in the room. Like there's so many different things. Gee, it's impossible to see the screen because it's in some funny angle. So all that kind of stuff has to happen before anybody from who's an attendee is actually there. And then we're kind of on stage. And we're on stage, certainly as facilitators, as trainers, from the moment we're actually there. Why? Because the learning and the relationship building, particularly the learning, does not happen just when people are sitting in their chairs during the retreat. So much of it happens in the conversations that we would have between sessions, at breaks in the morning, in the evening, beforehand. Somebody says, gee, when we spoke in that pre-interview, we talked about such. I've been thinking about it, and we learned things. We may have a question. Maybe there's a number two person, and we would like them to sit in a particular place and to watch out for one thing or the other, or that we want to let them know that, hey, can we call on you for something? Or people just ask us questions, right? Recently we did a leadership retreat where we did a lot of leadership training, and people ask questions about us, about leadership to us, and I'm in a situation of such and such. How do you think you'd handle it? So all those kinds of things, even when we're not presenting, we're literally on stage. After that, there's follow-ups. Okay, right after, because people may ask us for things, and people may ask the leadership and the logistics person. So there's follow-ups. Afterwards, there's a postmortem. How did it go? Right? What was really effective? How better? Excuse me, any quick observations we have. If we're setting up the portal for everybody with all the resources, a bit of a portal walkthrough, and then 30 days later, the impact meeting. What was the impact? Were there any obstructions? Were there any observations? And so on and so forth. So if you think about all the planning required to actually go through, if you took, big chunks of that away, what do you think of the effectiveness of the retreat will actually be? The risk level goes way, way up, and the probability of success goes way, way, way down. And let's be very clear here. The goal of the retreat most of the time is not the retreat. The goal of the retreat is to accomplish something that will stick well after the retreat. And it's very hard to do that unless you've actually gone through those 12 different points. One of the things that I think is a great thing to consider is, and we've spoken so much about what can go wrong, but what can go right? What can go right? The objective can be achieved. It can be a stronger team one, like the leadership team. Better relationships, misunderstandings can be mitigated or erased. The team can be motivated. They can be more all in. There's greater alignment when the information that you talk about is cascaded down, and momentum. There can be momentum. It could be a kickstart for whatever you happen to be. And I think those are a lot of the important reasons why spending the time planning and executing a great retreat, should be part of the mix of what a team actually does.